What would you say if I told you that you could save money and time and at the same time make your car more reliable? You'd sign up for that program, right? Well, actually, it's as easy as not replacing your ignition coils when you swap your spark plugs. I know the common wisdom on the internet is the drumbeat of change your plugs and your coils periodically, or every time there's some problem. It's usually offered as helpful advice by well-meaning folks who may not understand the details, and of course by those who will profit from selling you those new coils. Here's what you need to know about the ignition coils in modern cars so you can make your own informed, intelligent decision. The coil is an electronic component that has been designed to last as long as the car, and actually much longer. After all, a bad coil is going to cost the car manufacturer a small fortune in warranty repairs or in customer satisfaction, so the manufacturer has a vested interest in making sure those coils never, ever fail. The ignition coil has no moving parts. It's an entirely electronic component. And as such, it really never wears out. Think of how many other purely electronic components there are in the engine compartment of your car. Here's a very quick, very incomplete list showing some of the electrical parts in the engine compartment of my current road trip car, a 2011 Mercedes GLK 350. This list doesn't include the much more expensive Mercedes-specific modules that would add thousands of dollars on any such potential replacement list. Here's a shopping cart that I threw together just to show the top-level parts that were available from the Rock Auto website. And now it's obvious you're not going to replace all those components just because your car hits 100,000 miles or some other milestone, or if it has a problem with one of those parts. But there's also no good reason to replace all the coils either. But what are the main reasons for not replacing your coils as preventative maintenance? One is the cost. Legitimate OEM coils are very expensive from any legitimate vendor. Here are the coils that are available from my Mercedes from FCP Euro, who is a well-known and well-trusted vendor. You can see the Mercedes branded coils are $72 each, which is $432 for the set of 6. And you can get virtually the same coils made by the same manufacturer who sells them to Mercedes for only $47 each, as you can see, which is $282 for the 6 coils set. Or you can save about $50 for the set and go with the Delphi coils. All of these are going to be good coils, but that's a whole lot of money for something your engine really doesn't need. More on that later. Oh, but wait, you've found the same OEM coils from an Amazon vendor for less than half price. Well, I'd recommend you read up on the proliferation of counterfeit parts that's just raging in the car market right now. If the part isn't from a legitimate vendor or it's selling at a huge discount to the normal price, chances are pretty good it's a counterfeit part, and it's really just a relabeled no-name part made by vendors without the same quality control and engineering prowess as the OEM supplier. Well, how about the other non-OEM options? There are some really inexpensive coils out there after all. Well, here's a quick sampling for my car from Amazon. I know a lot of folks are buying these and replacing perfectly good OEM coils with these no-name coils from who knows where. And as a result, many of these folks are building in some new and exciting problems into their ignition systems. There is just no way in the world that these no-name coils are engineered, designed, and built to anywhere near the standards of those OEM coils. Put a set of these in your car, and there's a very good chance that you're going to have ignition problems. Soon, if not immediately. The second reason is that, counterintuitively, even brand name new electronic components are simply more likely to fail than the older ones that are already there. At least for a very, very long time, longer than you're likely to own your car. This concept is called the bathtub curve for obvious reasons. When a new component is manufactured, any mistake made in the manufacturing or any faulty component included in the coil will cause a failure that's likely to show up pretty quickly. As time goes by, this tendency drops until the product reaches the ideal center low failure rate lifetime in which failure is really pretty unlikely. Eventually, though, the aging of the component and the materials can eventually cause a rise in the failure rate, which is the other end of the bathtub curve, the other rise. However, note that my graph isn't linear, but the time scale is much more compressed as you move to the right. Chances are that all the coils in your car won't reach the serious upswing in the chart until well after the car is no longer on the road for other reasons. Please note that this analysis assumes well-designed, well-built parts. A no-name coil from a shady vendor will have a much higher failure rate right out of the box due to the low quality of design, construction, and components. The third reason you shouldn't replace those coils is that the car's manufacturer doesn't list coil replacement as a preventative maintenance item. Now folks, I know you know that dealerships love to sell maintenance on your vehicle. They can bankrupt you replacing parts on your car that are not quite perfect any longer, as anyone with a higher mileage, older car can attest to. Yet, even in their zeal to empty your bank account, the coils are not on their list of parts to be replaced periodically. Just think about that. The fourth reason you shouldn't replace those perfectly good coils is that they simply don't fail often enough to make it worthwhile. Oh, but some do fail, you say. Let's look at my own experience to get an idea just how likely that coil failure might be. Due to my penchant for doing lots of long road trips, I've made it a habit to buy only well-aged, higher mileage cars to avoid the depreciation cost. Here are the cars I've purchased in the last 20 plus years and the mileage that was on each of these cars when I purchased them. And as you can see, this moving collection of vehicles started with a lot of miles and a lot of years on the coils in the engines. And I put well over 500,000 miles, or about 800,000 kilometers, on these cars altogether since I've owned them. And in that time, I have had exactly one coil fail, and that was one in the 2001 Volvo V70 T5 that had 208,000 miles on the clock when I bought it. That's one coil at, let's say, $50. Now, had I followed the common internet wisdom and replaced all the coils in all those cars, since they all had so many miles and years on them, I would have replaced 46 coils. At that same fairly conservative $50 a coil price point, I would have spent an extra $2,300 on maintenance, not to mention the extra time to swap them out. And at best, what would spending that extra $2,300 have saved me? Only replacing that one Volvo coil when it did fail. That would have been exactly the only benefit. There would have been no other reason to have spent that $2,300. So let's look at that one Volvo coil failure and see just how big of a problem it is if you do have a coil failure. When a coil does fail, you'll feel an obvious roughness in the engine. It's going to be worse in engines with fewer cylinders. And you will get a check engine light eventually, and you can easily read in seconds the code from your OBD scanner, which is something everyone should have. If you don't, not a big deal. You can get the code read for free at most auto parts stores. And the code is going to point out which of your cylinders is misfiring. Now, of course, a cylinder misfire can be attributed to a worn out or dirty spark plug, which is a component that does wear out and should be replaced periodically as preventative maintenance. There are other suspects, which would include a bad or dirty fuel injector or a problem with valves or piston rings, but those issues are much less likely, and I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole on this video. Okay, so your OBD reader, or the one at the auto parts store, tells you that cylinder number 2 is misfiring. What do you do? Some will say just replace all the plugs and all the coils. Well, that might fix it, but you're spending money you don't really need to. And sure, if the plugs have been in there 100,000 miles and are due to be replaced, I think it's a good idea to swap them all out, though I still think determining if the problem really was due to a plug or something else is still a great idea. To do that is dead easy. Just remove the number 2 cylinder's coil and plug. Then swap the number 2 plug with the number 1 cylinder's plug. and then swap the number 2 cylinders coil with the number 3 cylinders coil. Clear the codes on the OBD scanner and then drive the car until the check engine light comes on again. Read the code and see if a problem has moved to cylinder number 1 or cylinder number 3. If it moved to 1, you know it was a bad plug. If the misfire moved to cylinder number 3, you know it was a bad coil, so you should replace that one coil. And if the misfire stays at cylinder number 2, things are going to get a little more interesting, because it could be a bad fuel injector or a problem internal to the engine, but we're not going to go there on this video. I hope this video helps you understand why it's really not necessary to replace your coils as a preventative maintenance issue, and that you'll find something much more worthwhile to put the money into, like maybe a new set of tires. If the video has helped you, I'd appreciate it very much if you'd like the video and subscribe to my channel. That'll make it easier to find similar content in current and future videos, and will help me to continue to produce more DIY videos. Thanks!